Young people today are poorer than the generation before them, and not just in how they feel, but in real, measurable terms. This is happening across the developed world, from the United States and the United Kingdom to Europe, Canada, and Australia. Despite being more educated than any generation in history, working longer hours and being more productive with technology, young adults are finding it harder every single year to afford the basics of a stable life. Wages have stagnated, costs have exploded, and the gap between effort and reward has quietly broken. To understand why this is happening, we need to look at how the economic rules changed beneath our feet. For decades after World War II, each generation could reasonably expect to be better off than the last. Real wages rose alongside productivity, housing was affordable relative to income, and one full-time job was often enough to support a family. If you worked hard, saved, and played by the rules, you could buy a home, raise children, and retire comfortably. But sometime around the late 1970s and early 1980s, that relationship began to fracture. Productivity continued to rise, meaning workers were producing more value than ever, but wages stopped keeping up. Since then, most of the gains from economic growth have flowed upward, not outward. At the same time, the cost of living began to rise faster than incomes. Housing is the clearest example. In the 1970s, the average home in many Western countries cost 2 to 3 times the average annual salary. Today, that figure is often 6 to 10 times income, and in major cities even higher. This means young people are forced to spend a much larger share of their income just to have a place to live, leaving little room to save or invest. Rent has replaced ownership, and equity has been replaced by monthly payments that never build wealth. Education, once a pathway to upward mobility, has also become a financial trap for many. Tuition costs have soared while the wage premium of a degree has shrunk. Young people are graduating with record levels of debt, entering job markets that no longer guarantee stability, and spending their early adult years servicing loans instead of building assets. Even high-skill professions that once promised security, such as law, medicine, and academia, are now marked by long training periods, delayed earnings, and increasing competition. Meanwhile, asset prices have surged. Stocks, real estate, and financial assets have grown rapidly in value, but ownership of these assets is heavily skewed toward older generations. Those who already owned homes or investments benefited enormously from rising prices, while those trying to buy in later were locked out. This has created a generational divide where wealth grows passively for some, while others are forced to rely almost entirely on wages that are falling behind inflation. Governments have played a role as well. Over the past few decades, many countries shifted away from policies that supported broad-based growth and towards systems that favored debt, financial markets, and asset inflation. Cheap credit made homes and stocks more expensive. Public investment declined. Social safety nets weakened. At the same time, taxes on labor often remained high, while taxes on capital were reduced. The result is an economy that rewards ownership more than work. Young people are also entering adulthood during an era of constant crisis. Financial crashes, pandemics, geopolitical instability, and now climate uncertainty have made long-term planning harder than ever. Stable career paths have been replaced by gig work, short-term contracts, and algorithm-driven labor markets. Benefits have disappeared, job security has eroded, and risk has been pushed from institutions onto individuals least able to absorb it. Even when young people do everything right, the math often doesn't work. Saving for retirement feels impossible when rent consumes half of your income. Starting a family feels risky when childcare costs rival mortgage payments. Buying a home feels unattainable when prices rise faster than wages year after year. As a result, traditional markers of adulthood are being delayed or abandoned entirely, not because of changing values, but because of economic constraint. What makes this situation especially troubling is that it is not the result of laziness, lack of ambition, or poor choices. It is structural. The economic system young people inherited is fundamentally different from the one their parents benefited from. Growth still exists, but it is uneven. Opportunity still exists, but it is increasingly gated behind wealth. And while technology has made life more efficient, it has not made it more affordable. The question is not whether young people are worse off. The data is clear that they are. The real question is how long this trend can continue before it reshapes politics, demographics, and society itself. Because when an entire generation feels locked out of prosperity, the consequences do not stay economic. They become social, cultural, and eventually political. And that raises a final question that no one seems willing to answer. If each generation is supposed to build a better future than the last, what happens when that promise is broken?